Charlie Smart. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. Why don't we call this meeting of the Information Technology Advisory Committee to order. It's Wednesday, March 10th, and this is our March meeting, which we are doing virtually as we have for the last year, basically. So happy virtual anniversary. Here's Charlie. We got thrown into fully virtual government a year ago. I think first order of business is, I think Dave's already taken attendance. So we can,
attendance is done.
Attendance is done. We can approve minutes from our January meeting. And Dave was nice enough to circulate those a couple days ago, recirculate them a couple days ago. So if you'd all just take a second and look at that. Do you need me to share them? I can screen share them if that would be easier.
If you throw them up, then they'll be in the video too, right? So
you throw them up, they'll be in the video. That is true. I hadn't thought about that.
Hey, Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm here, but I'm not quite here, I guess. Video isn't working well.
I feel like I'm being interrogated.
yeah, exactly. There we go.
You got me?
We got you.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
Good.
So this is the January 27th meeting. Here's who is there. Wasn't a super long meeting. We approved a remote meeting report, which has been submitted to the town administrator and I think brought before the select board. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think all our minutes are pretty up to date on the website.
Yep.
I think Ellen is happy with me.
Good.
Okay. So
yeah, they looked fine to me.
look fine to me too. Anybody have any corrections or changes? Otherwise, somebody move to adopt these.
Don't move. Second.
All in favor? I'll start. Paul Roberts, aye.
Bill
Dan?
Lawrence, aye. Nope, go ahead.
Aye.
David,
What
Glenn,
Aye.
the heck?
Charlie,
Aye.
Jim,
Yes.
Phil,
Yep.
Mr. Burge,
Aye.
Mr. Green.
Aye.
I think that's everybody, right? Did I leave anybody out? You got Dan. Okay, great. So adopted. I'm going to stop sharing so we can look at each other. Great. Let's just bring up the agenda. Just don't see anybody besides us, so I think we can dispense with public comments and questions. Okay, so next item is scheduling a meeting with the select board. I understand that we are on the agenda for April 5th. And I only say this because my friend Phil Thayer was virtually attending a select board meeting where they brought up the virtual meeting report and discussed what to do next. And there was a consensus, at least a majority on the select board who wanted to have us in to discuss it. And as I understand it, there was a 2-to-1 vote to have us in to discuss the report. And I heard it's April 5th. But I have not, I was just checking my email before we came on. I don't have that confirmation from the town administrator, but I can reach out to them and confirm that that's the case. It may just be that they haven't gotten around to letting us know. But I think I would pencil that in, and maybe when we schedule our next meeting, we can try and target it for that day.
Is that's for the report on virtual government or the
The other report. As far as I know, all they were discussing was the virtual government report. I don't know whether they're going to also want to discuss the other report under, executive session or what. But
right.
I certainly as you know, Dave and Glenn, in my email to them, I have urged them to take up both issues. And I'm not sure where things stand, but I can probably get some clarity from the town administrator on that. And let you all know.
So Paul, you're saying April 5th?
Yeah.
So I can confirm that no agenda has been posted for the 5th
Let me
on
just,
on the town website.
yeah. That's not that surprising because it's kind of far out, but.
Yep.
Let me just
Is there
double
anything
check
to be
this. exchange.
learned? Is there anything to be learned by the fact there was a 2-to-1 vote? That happened then?
And everybody wants to do it.
I was thinking that, Jonathan, but I was sure I wanted to raise it. So thank you.
Well, it jumps out at.
I think there was one select board member who didn't feel like it needed to be discussed, and the other two did. So I think we can all pretty much guess who that one select board member was, and whether they felt like it didn't need to be discussed because what we were saying was pretty straightforward and didn't warrant discussion, or whether there were other issues, I don't know.
Well, I think maybe it's worth mentioning, Paul, some of the email feedback you got when we submitted the report.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so there was a select board member who basically said he did not feel it was necessary to talk about it in the near future, partly because there were a number of other larger issues, on the radar and the horizon, such as the override and the upcoming town meeting warrants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the feeling was, let's wait till there's a new select board member, because Mr. Caputo is not running for re-election. I think Mark Palillo is running unopposed. So my guess is he'll be the next select board member.
Right.
And, sort of like there's no urgency to discuss this. I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I definitely agree. We've probably got a couple months more on the governor's executive order, but I wouldn't want to have to place a bet as to when it will get lifted.
So just on a more positive note, I was at a caucus meeting so I'm on town meeting. There was a precinct 1 and 7 caucus yesterday where we had invited in Adam Dash to speak about some of the things going on for the election, for the override vote, and some of the other things that are going to be on the warrant for the town meeting, upcoming town meeting. We had a few other speakers on various other topics, but what was encouraging was that select board member Dash actually did reference our report, because one of the comments that had been made during the discussion was, as much as we're all tired of Zoom meetings, it was actually one of the positive benefits was the increased participation in meetings of this kind across the town in a variety of different committees and forums, right? And so in that context, Adam Dash had brought up, oh yes, and by the way, the IT advisory committee has also brought up a report that brings this increased participation up, the benefits, but also reminded us that we're under this emergency situation, and he did reference and we've been encouraged to consider if I remember correctly, both facets of what we were suggesting, which is we as a select board should draft a letter that could be forwarded on to legislature because there are some rules that would need to be changed, as well as adopting formally some things that would allow us to at least continue to some fashion some of the remote participation within the town after the emergency situation. So I was very encouraged to hear him say that, and I doubt he knew I was part of the IT committee, since there was a fairly large group there. But I thought that was sort of a positive impact of what we were doing into what's going on in the town, and to hear him say it to a group of other elected town meeting members, I thought was great.
Great.
Cool. Looks like we have a call-in user.
Yeah,
That person identify themselves, please. We had a call-in user.
Way to go. We finally get somebody to come to our meeting. You scare them away. I told you, we need to be more friendly.
I just wanted to take attendance.
Well,
I agree with Dave.
people are
should
supposed to
have rules that
identify
tell us to do
themselves, so maybe that person will rejoin with their name attached. Okay. Yeah, I think I think our report actually does a really good job of kind of summing up these arguments and making the case for a more getting in front of this rather than waiting for the cold shower of us dropping out of the executive order and back into the old OML regime. And there are things that the town does need to consider, as including access and equity and public records issues and stuff like that. But again, I don't think any of those are insurmountable. I think we just need to make up our mind to do it.
Yeah, I'd put a plug in for, trying to get on the agenda sooner rather than later, because these things do take time. There might be something that we need to go past legal counsel or something like that. And there might be some, some drafting of something that goes to another meeting, so on and so forth. Given that we consider that there's going to be some changes probably in 2 months, maybe 3 months, I don't know. It's worth acting more quickly.
Yeah.
So we don't have a gap.
No. And I mean, I think the other issue, and I mean, I've raised this with Will and Dave on multiple occasions, is, that the legislature should really be on this issue and should take action before the executive order expires, I think, to update OML and, embrace some of these technologies that have now become more or less standard issue.
Yeah.
I think that the shock of going back into the existing regime is going to be substantial, and it's not going to look good for the legislature to be on their back foot when that happens. But
I agree.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as for the other report, again, I think that's something that warrants a pretty healthy discussion as well. And I'd like to think that we can address both issues when we go in to meet with them, but I don't know. But I would, again, pencil in April 5th, and I'll let you know when I hear back from Patrice if it's a different date. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Following up on 5G inquiry plans for 2021. I don't have much to report on that. I do know that the town has obviously received applications for 5G antennas in the past. I'm not sure where and that those have kind of been put on hold or put on the back burner, and I'm not sure where we are for 2021. I do think this committee, we should really engage with the select board and town administrator on having some kind of proactive plan for this, so that we don't just back into a 5G deployment, that there's some purpose and overarching vision for it, because I do feel like those these types of rollouts are going to be getting more likely. But I need to follow up with Patrice on exactly where things stand and whether they need our help addressing that this year as well. And then, our 2021 agenda, it's March. What are the committee's thoughts on next steps, and maybe kind of plotting out some kind of a calendar for 2021 on what we want to tackle?
Well, I'll throw out two ideas that came to mind recently. One, again, I learned this at the precinct caucus last night, but there apparently is a group that just started meeting to think about website redesign?
Yeah, I'm on that.
Okay,
sorry.
you're part of that. Oh, okay,
Got
great.
it.
All right, so I was just going to say, like, it'd be useful to get plugged in, but apparently we are. So awesome.
We are. Yep, we're already on that committee, and let me just see if I can tell you when our next meeting is. But yes, so I am a part of that conversation, and we met. I think actually it was last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So maybe I should give you an update on that.
Well, I mean, that's fine. I would say
Yeah.
that's like if we have time.
Yeah. The other thing though, the other thing that we is the government restructuring committee that's looking at ways to reform how Belmont's government works. We are not really a part of that, but I'm wondering, to the extent that technology adoption or shifting work to to the cloud, or automation might be part of any sort of restructuring plan, whether we might want to at least have a line of communication open to that committee.
Right. Yeah, that was something else I learned about. Are folks on this committee familiar with this? There's a new committee
No.
that just formed. It's called the Structural Change Impact Committee, I think.
All right.
Oh, yeah, I do. I saw
Yeah,
that. I
I've
saw
heard of
something
it.
about that on Facebook, but I did not actually follow up on it. I saw it like an announcement of a meeting, I guess, was what I saw.
Actually, I dropped in on a meeting that they convened, I want to say last week sometime recently. And it was more of a blue sky discussion.
Right.
It was a opportunity for people to call in to offer ideas, not so much detailed solutions, but sort of ideas and issues. One of the things that came up, it was sort of interesting. I just listened. I didn't offer my point of view. Somebody talked about the organization of IT resources in the town, and how, I can't remember if it was a he or she, let's say it was a he, how those perhaps could be centralized or coordinated, and why aren't they? Because this whole discussion was on how can we save money for the town, and what are possibilities. I don't even know if that person realized that the schools have their own IT department, and even the municipal light department has a small department. But I suppose it's an interesting issue from our standpoint, although I'm not sure what, if anything, we should do in terms of taking a position on it. Anybody else drop in on that meeting? Guess not.
No, I've been.
I haven't been following this. I did see something on Facebook about it, but just a couple of questions. Is this an appointed committee, or is it just a bunch of interested citizens who are forming a discussion group?
I don't know.
It's a formal committee. There's Adam Dash is the select board representative there. There's a school committee member. There's 2 members of the warrant committee, a member of the energy committee, a member from Vision 21, and then there are 4 appointed resident.
Okay. Thank you.
And that all those people were not present at this particular session.
Oh, okay.
There were maybe 3 or 4 people who looked like they were part of a committee, and were sort of running the organization of the session. And then there were, just people from the town who were calling in and offering up their ideas, their blue sky ideas on how the town might be run more efficiently and save money. But if I had been trying to get a sense of how many people were on this committee, it wouldn't have been 12 or 13. It would have been more like 3, 4, or 5. But, you know, it's possible that the other people, for good reason, just didn't show up.
Well, it
Yeah,
sounds
so-
like some interesting ideas came up, but
Yeah, so one of the things I learned, and let me, you know, they've got a formal section in the website. Yeah, here it is. There's a tiny URL, which I can't remember, but I'm going to paste into the chat what this other URL will get you to. So one of the things that they had talked about yesterday, because one of the representatives of that group did speak to the caucus last night, and what they're focused on right now is trying to, as Charlie was just saying, collect ideas about ways that monies could be saved, or, you know, improvements to town services. And so the link I just posted is where they were accepting ideas, and they're really pushing for people to submit ideas so that, you know, their focus as a group will be to take as many ideas as possible, sort of organize them, deduplicate them, and then, you know, come up with a set of recommendations that are based on, you know, all of the sort of best thinking of the town in terms of what may be fruitful for having impact, and, you know, something that's doable. I don't know when or how long this survey is meant to stay open, but again, we were all encouraged to you know, have conversations, and if anyone has ideas that look like they might be useful for this committee to consider, to just throw them in there, even if they're possibly done before. They said they'll take care of all the repeats and make sure that it all gets organized, so that at the end of this process, they will have as many ideas to consider, and then really sort of weigh the merits of each.
Why do I find it curious that this URL is not a Belmont town URL?
Yeah, it's a bit funny too. And like I said, they have a tiny URL which they've been using, but and it's something like, you know, tiny.url at Belmont change. So it's a little bit more digestible.
But it makes me think it's really not an official town committee, that they're sort of a rogue, a rogue group of people who are doing their own thing.
Or they just don't know how to use town. The town didn't provide them with the tools, just like we use Google Docs.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's really what this looks like. It's just a way for them to do a survey.
Yeah.
So somebody said, this is how I know how to do a survey. I don't see it as a rogue thing. I think it's just, you know, this is what they know. And nobody thought to go to Dave and say, hey, how can I do this with an official town resource?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, but then to Charlie's original question or point about the idea of consolidating IT departments, haven't we, it seems in my memory that we had in fact addressed this issue and did something in some communication to the town, indicated that we thought that it was ill-advised to consolidate IT resources, since there was so much different stuff that happens at the school level as compared to, you know, what Dave Pedo's in charge of.
I think that's correct,
Am I-
but I don't know how
remember-
long ago that was.
I'd put it at about 7 years ago. I remember that
Mhm.
very distinctly.
I think it's a perennial issue. I think we've done it more recently than that. But I don't think
Well-
the fundamentals had changed. So our position didn't change at that point.
Right.
Yeah, I know. While I didn't jump into the arena and sort of say, hey, you know, there are really unique issues, you know, that are handled by the different facets of the town's IT sort of support staff. That thought certainly went through my mind because we do know that that's true. Although I've often wondered, sort of can understand the freestanding nature and need for a school department IT. Never been totally convinced as to why the light department needs its own, but that's one man's opinion, you know.
Yeah, there was, I mean, just to kind of go through the history as I remember it, there was a point at which school and town IT departments were being considered for consolidation. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. And we were asked to weigh into what, you know, whether that would be a good idea or not. we took comments from both departments and put together our recommendation that we supplied to the select board. And then when it was, I think it was, a light department person at Burlington, I believe it was consulted as to whether our light department should have their own IT department and split off. It was, it was kind of recommended by that person that happened. I think we spoke out against that because we didn't really see the need necessarily for the light department to have its own IT department. But that went through anyways. And I don't think we've since, I think it's come up in various conversations, but I don't think we've acted on it since then. That's my recollection.
Yeah, I think there was a little more nuance under the hood there with the light department. They wanted to split off of the town's network and create their own internal network for their regular IT services, not just for the SCADA and things like that, which were already separated. And that led to them saying, well, if we're going to have our own network, we got to have our own IT group managing it.
Yeah.
And I think we ended up with that. We felt, well, we couldn't stop them, and our recommendation was that okay, if that makes the most sense, but it should be worked into the SLA so that the three department which started as a 2-department agreement would cover the 3. And my understanding is that actually happened.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and yeah, I should have brought that up. That's an important aspect here is, whatever happens in terms of which what departments are interacting with what has to be reflected in the SLA, and I think we did that.
Yep.
I mean, the other data point is just the report that we passed off to the selectmen within the last 6 months that looked at things from a kind of, let's just say, risk perspective, and certainly found evidence that the very siloed kind of nature of IT functions within Belmont is resulting in some gaps as well as some duplication and certainly inconsistent policies and practices that could bear on our risk posture. I think, is that a fair way to say it, Glenn?
That's my recollection also, that was another conversation that we had.
Right.
Was when we reviewed sort of security measures and policies that were in place between the different departments. We didn't find consistency, and it seemed like there was some definite need for
everybody's
sharing.
got their own MSP, everybody's got their own endpoint suite, everybody's got I think there's some consistency. Well, I'm not even sure about that, so a lot of problems. But
there's the different organizations do their own things because they have different requirements and different regulations that govern them as well.
Right.
I understand that
some of it I think is necessary, unfortunately.
But I understand there's also a lot of shared resources. So if someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the school and the town basically back up each other in terms of their data sets. So it's not as, there's not as much redundancy as might first appear. It's really more specialization, I think, is a better way to look at it.
I don't see it as much as, I don't really think that there's any necessary cost savings in there for the town in terms of consolidation. I doubt that there is. I think of it more in terms of just, unified chain of command, and then the ability to have and execute on a town-wide IT vision that encompasses the various functions in town. And I think that's the real challenge for Belmont, is absent a unified IT function, there isn't a unified IT vision or program. There's just kind of each siloed department, makes its own purchasing and planning and acquisition decisions. Some of them are duplicative. I mean, you can do it that way. I'm not sure. I don't see many other, $150 million, 500, 600 employee organizations that don't have, they might have different IT groups, but they do have a unified IT function.
Yeah, I think one other point to bring up is that we did identify that cost, increases as a consequence of consolidation for purchasing.
It could.
Where there's an education discount for something that the school is taking advantage of. If there's just one pool of money, then you have to kind of say it's from the town, and you might not be able to take advantage of that discount. So
yeah, I don't know.
A lot of factors here.
Yeah, I don't think the cost issue, I don't think the savings issue is particularly the most persuasive one. I just wonder if it's more about just planning and
standardization and vision. I agree with that.
Standardization of,
Well, I think it's important to ask that question is, what are you trying to accomplish with consolidation? Is it to centralize or is it to economize? And because then you know how to evaluate whether the proposal makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's the analysis we did about 8 years ago, if I remember it correctly, was, why, what's the purpose? Why would you do it? And then taking it from each one of those vantage points, what are the benefits and what are the detractors? I don't know if it's worth, if things have changed so radically that it's worth doing that again. Certainly, the structure of the IT departments in town has changed since we did that analysis.
It's also, I mean, there's the organizational issues, but it's also the case that an increased level of consistency could be built through increased collaboration between the teams that already exist, rather than just adding another layer of management on top of everybody who already exists there. Encourage the heads of the different teams to work together and give them a charter that says, this is what you need to do as the leaders of your respective groups, keeping account of the fact that there might be, as Phil's pointed out, some cost savings and other elements or some structural things that might end up in cost savings if they're kept separate, like purchasing agreements and things like that.
I suspect that the motivation behind this question probably pertains to headcount. I think
there's like no doubt at all.
Okay, so sorry if I say to the obvious. All right.
Yeah. Well, it's also I think partly in the context of the override, right? Where you've got contingency planning if the vote goes no, and where best to spend, or what kind of economies of scale might there be if there's a yes and they're going to increase headcount. Right? So it's all wrapped up with budget, right?
This whole session was. I'm not sure if they dwelled on this, but it was how can we save money by doing things differently? I mean, they were talking about, and again, these were ideas that people were throwing out without them really knowing any of the details behind how things work.
Can I just maybe add a practical sort of cap to this conversation? Because we're not going to solve it here, right? What I was going to suggest is, I think we raised or Paul raised this issue of the Structural Change Impact Committee as another committee whose work we may have some relevancy for, right? I think that was the sort of premise. So it seems like there may be 2 or 3 sort of next steps that we can outline. One could be, if any of us individually, or if we as a group feel that we have ideas that we'd like to get in front of them so that they are aware of those, then we should either personally feel empowered to do that, or decide as a group whether or not we want to spend time thinking about that and then getting it in. The second thing I'd say is like, it's probably worth an outreach to them just to make them aware that we are here as a resource to help when they have collected all their thoughts and are starting to evaluate the merits of the different ideas, to say, you know, if there are IT specific ones, like this thing around, you know, whether or not the different departments should be consolidated, that we could be consulted and have some history and responding and evaluating some of these related questions.
I agree with that. I think we should avail ourselves as a resource and as a body who has kind of deliberated on the matter and has some sort of historical perspective.
Right.
Yeah. And I would add that we should not forget risk. You know, cost savings can introduce risk, and that can be very, very costly.
Yeah. Yep.
No doubt. Does somebody want to take the job of reaching out to that committee and kind of saying, hey, we're ITAC, we're here, and, you know, we'd love to, you know, coordinate with you or do a Zoom session with you or answer questions or just be available as a resource?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I think we definitely, again, should have a line of communication to that committee. I think, you know, I mean, as if I were to look at, you know, kind of structural reform within the town, you know, I would think a lot just in terms of, you know, kind of workflow, right? And ways to leverage, you know, automation and cloud-based services and, you know, tools to, you know, kind of push services out to residents rather than asking them to come into town hall and do things. And that would seem to have potentially huge savings in it. But
I had a thought, Glenn, about maybe I'm going to say how best to approach these people, and that would be to find out first, perhaps through Patrice Garvin, what they're about. I mean, I just got a general impression of what they're doing.
Yeah, I posted their charter in the chat. So there's a link. They've got a full section in the town website about what they're doing. They've met probably about 7 times already. And so all their minutes and agendas are online as well.
Yes, but do you get a sense that, you know, the town administrator in particular wants the, frankly, the vice chairman of this committee to be reaching out to them directly? I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of talking about town politics here and how best we might be able to make ourselves available to them.
Are there minutes?
Yes, there are.
And that would be up on this first link.
It's not on the first link, but it's close to it. Hold on.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I would just reach out to the chair, maybe copy Patrice or Adam and just say, introduce yourself and say, we know you guys are looking at, you know, big picture questions about, you know, how the town works. And we've got a whole bunch of technology and professionals, and we're here to, you know, be a resource to your committee if any of your inquiries delve into, you know, technology deployment or, you know, questions about how the town functions now and in areas related to IT and things like that.
That sounds perfectly fine to me, especially the idea of CCing the town administrator and the chairman of the board.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Sorry, the chairman of which board?
Select board.
Well, whoever there, I think you said Adam was their select board representative. So.
Oh, is he the, okay.
Yeah, he's
right. Looks like Mark Palillo is currently the vice chair
of that committee, correct?
Okay. So on the website renewal, I just went back through my notes. We did meet on March 4th. And so I thought it would just be worthwhile to give you a quick update on just what's going on with that committee. Basically, what we've been doing is, you know, really taking a look a little bit at the back end of the current town website to get a sense of, you know, what information people are accessing, what level of traffic we're getting and to what, where we're, all the sort of basic website Google Analytics type data, which we're getting both from Google Analytics and from the hosting company that hosts our Civics Plus, which hosts our website, and I think a lot of other towns in the Bay State. So we got some useful information from them, not so useful from Civics Plus, but definitely from Matt and in the town administrator's office, just from the Google Analytics interface on, what people are looking for. And, by and large, there aren't many surprises. People are looking for, trash and recycling is a big draw to the site. A lot of people are looking for just very practical information on, cardboard pickup and trash and recycling pickup and stuff like that. They're looking to pay bills and do functional things. And, maybe they're looking for, obviously the number one draw this year has been COVID related information. The COVID alerts and info that the town has been posting are far and away the most visited page on the website. So that's good. So we're getting some interesting intelligence. There's some interesting information just in terms of use patterns and kind of the flow across the site. Some of these pages obviously have pretty high bounce rates just because people are finding the information they need and leaving. But you do get the sense that the site is difficult to navigate, and I think that kind of comes out of the data a little bit as you look at it. I think the next thing that the committee is trying to do is assess through potentially some surveys, not just, what we already know, which is what people are using the site for, but what they might want to use the site for, not just what they are finding, but what they couldn't find, sort of proving the negative, which is a little bit harder to do. We don't, it's hard to know what people were looking for that they didn't find, but we want to try and explore that a little bit, and then talk about, big picture ideas about what ways we might reorganize the site. I think there's a general agreement that the town's website right now is, which Ellen Cushman herself pointed out, obviously very functionally organized basically by department. It sort of reflects the bureaucracy of the town rather than how people actually use the site or what they're looking for. So I think there is a more or less unanimous agreement on the committee that as we redo the site, we're going to want it to be much more functionally and use-based in its organization rather than departmental in its organization. Beyond that, bigger questions about what platform, whether we stick with Civics Plus, whether we, go on our own, organization of the site, functions is all TBD at this point. We haven't gotten there yet.
Well, I have a question. When people use Google to find their way into our site, which is what I'd usually do.
Yeah.
When we get when they get passed to us from Google, do we get any clue about what they were searching for?
Yes, but only a very small set of users, because a lot of that traffic is encrypted now. And so Google doesn't share with you the search. It's only sharing with you the non-encrypted search term traffic. So
none of it anymore.
At this point, so many, it's like, it's really probably not representative. So that's a little bit of a black box. And I think we get some from the native search feature within the site, but if any of you have ever used it, terrible. And I think
not very useful.
Yeah, so no, we can tell obviously by the landing page, by where their entry point is, but we don't have what I would consider representative data on the search terms.
That's too bad.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, I deal with this on my website too. It's just, it's good. We all went to HTTPS. That's great. So that's where it's going. It's a good committee, and I'm not sure exactly where we're going next with it, but I do think that, again, there is a good amount of consensus that, the current structure of the site doesn't work. We want to be much more user friendly. We want to front information that people actually are looking for, and just in general make the site more easy to navigate and understand, and move away from this kind of, if you know what department handles the thing you're looking for, then you can maybe find the thing you're looking for. So I think that's for sure. And we just need to figure out what the best way to get there is.
Paul, I assume there's a representative from the town's IT department on the committee. Who might that be?
I believe that Dave is on this committee.
Okay, good.
Dave Petto is, yeah. I don't think he was in our last meeting, but I'm pretty sure he's on the committee.
It's Steve Mazzola also
I don't
appoint
think
somebody.
Steve is on it, no. Because actually the schools have their own website, and that's kind of beyond our purview. We're really just looking at the Belmont Gov site.
Any talk of Elasticsearch or some sort of search technology that does a little bit better job of indexing and presenting results and that kind of stuff?
No, but that's a really good point. Maybe would you care to come and talk to us about that?
I'm not an expert, but we do use it internally. So I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
So no, I think the conversation we've had is really around, people tend to get focused on kind of the look of the site. I mean, I think one of the points I made is like this restructuring is, yes, about the features of the website, but it's also really about the content of the website. And we really, re-author a lot of this content to be much more SEO, smart about SEO, and, use index, keywords and so on, to just make sure that Google is looking at and seeing it the right way. We have talked about that, but we haven't really talked about, like Elasticsearch or any of those tools
I just think that one of the main, maybe if the content is there, just fixing search might be the first best thing to do, because I think a lot of people do come to the site and say, well, what I'm looking for is something on, having to do with a dog license. I don't know what, right? And if you do dog license, that search, the results, if just try it, it's just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And you'll get all kinds of documents, no relevancy, right? Anyway,
I mean, somebody even pointed out that, like, the appraiser, one of the big features of the site is a home appraisal, the town appraiser's office. But that their database is called appraisals 14, for 2014 or something. And it's just confusing, people might think that they're looking at an old appraisal, even though it is the most recent version. So there's stuff like that. I mean, I definitely mentioned, listen, the fact, Google does index PDFs, but it definitely doesn't index them as well as it indexes HTML. And that much of the valuable content on our site is buried in PDFs, or even worse, in JPEGs and PNGs and image files that Google definitely doesn't index, at least not without really good metadata. So that's another thing to look at. Again, it's more of a process thing of okay, let's not make PDF the default container for all the really juicy, useful information people need, or at least have a non-PDF version of it that Google can easily find.
Paul, have you talked about improved processes for getting content onto the site in an expeditious manner? Because there are a couple of committees whose meetings I've gone to recently, and their minutes are more than 9 months out of date, even though I know they've met because they have posted meeting notices, but the actual meeting minutes are nowhere to be found.
Well, that means their secretary sucks.
We have an exceptional secretary.
Unlike ours.
But I mean, those kind of things could be improved by having a process to audit, the fact that, committee meeting minutes show up within, 6 weeks of when a meeting has been held or something like that, not
Yeah.
a year.
So that's the elephant in the room. And I mean, we've talked about this as well, even in terms of things like meeting scheduling and posting agendas. Like there's a real opportunity for us to leverage, automation around some of these functions.
Yeah.
And make it much easier to do this, both to submit minutes, to get them posted, to submit agendas, get them posted.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about that in so much. We've definitely talked about the need to democratize access to the site so that committees can post their own information and that you don't have these bottlenecks either in the town clerk's office or the town administrator's office where there's basically, one person whose job it is to post all this information. So
I would put it as or frame it around, workflow. Is it possible to implement a workflow that is that is a standard process for doing something like running a committee, right? And
Yeah.
taking minutes for it.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, I suspect that what Dave's point earlier is really more the case than the fact that the town didn't receive the minutes and put them up. I suspect it's more the case that the minutes weren't received in a timely manner, and even then, a workflow would be helpful too, because then the designated secretary of that committee can be automatically pinged to
Right.
provide the minutes, and then alerts can be generated to the town clerk if minutes are more than a certain amount overdue, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
Isn't there
I
a
mean,
certain logistical problem related to minutes in that they can't really go to the town clerk until they're ratified? And if a committee meets very infrequently, you could easily see months go by from one meeting to the next before they get ratified. And then after which they then can go to the town
Yeah,
clerk.
yeah. So
Yeah,
you
and it
have to
might-
take that into account. But the committee that I'm talking about met monthly, and you could see that they were on the calendar for monthly meetings, and yet there were no minutes for many months.
You
Yeah.
could have the SLA for minutes be in terms of numbers of meetings behind, right? Something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Mhm.
I want to pop back a second. I think it's going to be very difficult to break the town of the habit of doing everything with PDFs. But it really does make searching difficult. There are tools that can be used to extract all the text from PDFs and from other forms of documents. The most common one, the one that's open source, is called Tika. It's an Apache project.
Yeah.
And it would be pretty straightforward just to run that over all the PDFs and create parallel pages that Google would find and index, and then just have those pages redirect to the PDF documents that are ground truth. We could also do that internally with our own search, making our own search
Yeah.
work a lot better, I think.
yeah. See, these are great ideas, guys. I'm wondering if we should set up maybe a joint meeting between this committee and the website renewal committee to kind of talk about, because obviously this group has a lot of expertise, certainly in some of these issues, and website renewal committee definitely have some technical resources on board, but it's also more user perspective, user committee, which is not bad. So what I will bring these back to them and maybe propose a joint meeting of that committee and this committee to talk through some of these issues and maybe give the website renewal committee a little bit of focus moving forward.
Okay, I'm interested in that. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that is it for the agenda for this meeting, unless anybody else has, something to discuss.
Yeah, I had one more thought just to float with the group in terms of other things we could consider looking into for 2021.
Go for it.
Recently, and Paul, you may have gotten this as well, the town meeting members were also sent a message from Ellen Cushman, our town clerk, reminding everyone that there's actually quite a bit of information, public information that the town has that they've digitized and made available on a website, right? And I forget what it is, but there's something like 12. I want to say it's either 1,200 or 12,000 documents, something like that. Those are statistics they used in the message. And if I find it, I'll circulate it to the group here. But you know, that was the first I had heard of it. I knew that there was some digitalization of our documentation, and I think it's an ongoing project that they've had. But you know, there might be some interest in understanding a little bit of, you know, what they've done, how much of that is of the overall, and just, you know, at least having some more knowledge and awareness of what that what's going on there, right? I don't know if there's really a to-do there, but it just seems like something that might be interesting to look into.
Yeah, as I remember, that communique from Ellen went out to the town meeting and committee members in general. There was a little bit of don't bother us about getting a copy of a document until you look at this group.
Right. It was a bit of a,
right.
You know, right. There's like there's a public information request that folks can make, and
Yeah.
right.
But at the same time, and she obviously didn't have the space to discuss, you know, the full nature of what's there, but there wasn't much of a sense of what was there, you know, right now to get. So your point is well taken.
So where do all these documents, where does all this content live?
Not sure. Glenn, did you?
There was a link in her message. I'd have to go find the message.
I'll have to go look it up.
If
Okay.
you weren't on that mailing list, would you ever be able to find it?
Well, she also posted it, I think it must have been the same link to a query on Facebook, where somebody asked about how do I do a public information request, and she said, well, if you need to do that, do this, but you might not need to do that, because if you go here, you may well find the document you're looking for.
I found it. I'll post it in the chat.
Okay, great.
I remember looking at that and I found it curious, as I recall, that not only are the documents that people have requested, you know, cataloged, but also all of the requests themselves and who made the request.
Yeah. I've used this site. I think of this as like the public records request site, but I guess maybe it's where they're surfacing all this other information as well, which would make sense, because if you're going to do a public record, open record request, you might first search to see if it's already there. I will say I have tried to search for data, and it's not always straightforward whether what you're searching for is available. But I have used that site before. I just didn't know that. I thought they were only posting historical responses to open records requests, but it sounds like it's more than that, which is great.
Yeah,
Well,
I get the sense that it is a little bit more than that, but then again, I didn't get a sense of what the broad nature of those documents was.
Oh, well, my interpretation actually was the same as Paul's, that this was actually just a catalog of prior public information requests, you know, the results from those. I don't know if they proactively put stuff into the same database before there's an actual request for it. Maybe they do, but I didn't get that sense.
It would make sense for them to do that in the chance that rather than file an open record request, which is going to generate work on their end, you actually find what you're looking for and then don't file the open record request. I know I was looking for a list of current town meeting members with email addresses, and I did search for it. I couldn't find it, but then when I did my record request, they were like, "Oh, this is already available, and here's the link." So it was sort of like, okay, well, you're searching.
Some of the requests also though have a limited applicability. Like somebody made a request for cat licenses in 2017, which I just posted the link to in the chat also. And, you know, that if somebody's looking for current cat licenses, that's going to be different in 2021 than 2017 due to the demise of some segment of those cats, or they moved out of town.
So, Paul, I think
calculate the cat mortality rate in town using that data.
Exactly.
Paul, to your point around whether they're just lists of requests that have been done versus proactive loading. I just posted the intro from the email that she sent around, and it does look like they're at least proactively and continuously loading voting information, right?
Great.
And as you can see, that's where I had that 1,200 or 12,000 number. They say there's at least 12,000 or more than 1,200 public documents available on that site right now.
Did you get any sense, Glenn, that whether there's a search capability on that that's perhaps better than that on the town website?
I haven't actually played around with it yet.
Okay.
So.
There definitely is a search feature, and you can search by keyword. I mean, it's a nice little search engine. I sometimes find the results a little bit confusing. You know, you can narrow it by department, point of contact, you know, keyword, whether it's an opened or closed request. But I don't know, again, I find the output a little bit like difficult to intuit. But I have no reason to believe it's not an accurate search engine. So, so what was your thought, Glenn, that we should maybe do a little bit of work exploring what's there and trying to sort of front that?
I raised it for awareness and to see if there was something that would be productive for us to consider, right? You know, it's, you know, we were talking about website, you know, design, which is, you know, about access to information. This is another example of, you know, more town information that's being publicly available. And, you know, do we have any feelings, thoughts, concerns about it? That's all.
Yeah, you could sort of see wouldn't be bad to have some kind of an index or you know, contents where people could look rather than having to, I mean, use search as a way to find stuff. Just sort of like, oh, are you looking for, you know, historic town meeting member lists? Here those are. Are you looking for, yeah, old budgets, old town budgets? Here are the old town budgets, you know, here, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, well, let's take a look.
So I have no strong opinion on it, but if folks do, then certainly willing to entertain the conversation.
Yeah. I think it's definitely something we can take a look at. It might ultimately feed into the website renewal project as well, insofar as it would be good to front some of that information on the town website rather than, you know, again, pushing people off actually onto another domain, this next request, and expecting them to just know that that's there as a resource. Okay. Do we want to pick our next meeting date and adjourn?
Sure.
You want to try and make that coincident with the April 5th date?
Let's do that. Yes, let's do that for the time being. And again, if it ends up being, although that, oh, well, okay. So that's Monday the 5th. And if it ends up being not that Monday, but the next Monday or something, then we can just reschedule to accommodate that. Okay.
Sure.
So we'll say Monday the 5th at 7:30.
Well, will that cause a direct conflict with the select board?
Oh, yeah.
Such that we should meet earlier?
Huh?
Should we meet at 6:30 or something like that?
Sure, 6:30. Yeah.
For 7? I don't know. What
Or
works for
7.
you.
Let's say 7. How about 7? We can always, you know, have a joint meeting. I mean, kind of call ourselves to order whenever the selectmen choose to talk to us, and just have the joint meeting happen that way as well, as long as there are enough of us to do it. Or we can meet early, talk, adjourn, and then, you know, 2 of us can go and, you know, we can do what we've done before. I mean,
Yeah, just as a heads up, the select board meetings typically start at 7.
okay. So what would you recommend? Should we convene before the selectmen meeting and have a half hour to talk and get our bearings? Or I guess I mean, we could obviously meet. I mean, it really depends. Actually, it really depends on kind of where we are on the agenda. You know, if we're at that, you know, 8 p.m. mark, then we could easily meet at 7:30 and be ready for them at 8, but we don't know exactly, even if we're on that agenda, let alone when. So why don't
When
we
will
just,
we know whether we're on the agenda?
I'll find out from Patrice. I'll shoot her an email right after I get off with you
Okay.
guys and see and just confirm that. Why don't we call it for 7:30 and then, we can move it when we figure out where we are.
Sounds fine.
Maybe if you're going to be in touch with Patrice, maybe you could request a particular, like a not before time on their
Yeah,
agenda.
like, can you put us on at 8 or something like that?
Yeah, 8 or 8+.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good, gentlemen. Somebody want to
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Hand?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have
Thanks.
a great night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Right.